Yeah.
Yo, we here. We ready to get it. Welcome back to another episode of Black Nerd Fridays. I'm your host, Ren, aka Mr. Refine, aka Black Bearded Nerd. And I got my co-host with me, D Neal, aka Beard Talk Now, aka the Podcast King. What's
Run
good?
it up.
What's good with you?
Oh man, I'm good, man. Shout out to Helicoastal Brewing Company and everybody in their mama beer fest. You know what I mean? Got some hot fire coming that way. You know what I mean? A couple breweries I got to talk to that I probably would have never met if I didn't go to the beer fest. So man, it's going down.
That's what's up, man. So you already know we getting into, I'm gonna say, one of my favorites. It is a classic in its own way, and specifically for me. We gonna talk about it, man. It's Crooklyn. Like, if you ain't seen Crooklyn, I don't know what to tell you. And I ain't gonna
Crooklyn.
say spoiler alert or nothing because it is what it is. This movie is over 20 years old, man. If you ain't watched it, I don't know what to tell you. We're gonna talk about this joint, man. So this is again a classic, something I loved. You talking about the dynamic of Black folks growing up in a certain time frame, just us as a people, the things that we did and the way we lived back then. So let's get right into it. Oh, you got our fourth co-host on.
Yeah, that's right. You already know. She the runner of my life.
Yeah, no, I get it, bro. I get it. So let's do our normal.
Oh man, you already know, man. So first and foremost, like I said, man, shout out to Helicoastal Brewing Company. Got their license, the second Black-owned brewery in Oakland, California. You know what I mean? I got they hop on it. You know what I mean? I also got they good old get out the microphone. I also got they hella friends. You know what I mean? Stop. I said get out the microphone, bro. And then last but not least, I got Brewing with Brothers. Shout out to them out of East Palo Alto. EPA was good. And they got their hello friends. Just a play on the hella and hello, two different cultures joining together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what's up, man. I love to see that. So I'm gonna keep it simple. Basically, since we talking about the 70s here, right? I'm gonna keep it simple with this, Utica Club Pilsner Lager right here. You know what I'm saying? This joint, this an old brew right here. So we're gonna get into this classic joint. I got a special cup. If you know, you know. You heard? Like this what it is right here.
I see it though. Woo, that fire. Hold on, man. I got a cup too. If you know that Crown and Hops though. That OG, the OG founders group. You know what I mean? Come on, shout out, man. Where was your $250 to get $5 a share when the time was right? All right.
And it's crazy because I ain't even got mine on me, but it's upstairs. It just got to be washed. Cheers, yo.
Oh man, got to pour up. I got the co-host up here.
Go ahead, pour up.
She watching Chippendale Rescue Rangers. She's
the movie or the cartoon?
She saw the movie and she watching the show. She watching the show now.
Oh yeah, go watch the show. She already with it.
Yeah, hopefully this glass cleaning up because I definitely just washed it.
That's what I'm talking about. I've been using my glass for the past 2 weeks. I'm gonna say, you know what I'm saying? So I already know what it is, and I love it. It pours nicely. It looks beautiful. My wife, she's like, "Oh, I already know you got a new glass. You use the same glass over and over and over once you get a new one, and until you get another one of those." So I'm gonna be stuck with that OGFC. I got the hat, I got the glass, I got the bag. You know what I'm saying? So respect and shout out to Crowns of Hops. You already know what it is.
That's right, man. You see it. You see the pour was nice. The glass was mostly clean, you know what I mean, with my one quick wash, you know what I'm saying? So it didn't look too crazy. Man. Look at that, man. You that, that good old hazy, that hop on it. Cheers, brother. Cheers.
All right. So what's your good, your bad, and your ugly of Crooklyn?
Oh man, I mean the good is definitely gonna just be showing Black folks, man, 100%. Everything that we do, especially in that time, the jumping jacks. I mean, they literally up here, instead of playing, they were playing stick ball, you know what I mean, or strikeout. The whole thing would actually, because I wasn't big into baseball, but I remember seeing certain things like that where people would play kind of like the stats situation. You roll the dice and you if you hit a home run or something like that. But the feel was good, man. Just the whole community, man, the Black and brown community, especially. I mean, again, I only visited New York one time. But that Black and brown is very heavy, man. Like the African people of the diaspora is always in the similar areas of one another most of the time, and it was just good to see. Even though you had your back and forth, you know what I mean. It still was good to see them in a group. And one of the key things I love was the actual ownership of the actual place that they were living. So the house, the brownstone that they was living in, the black family owned it, and you had the landlord, the Latina woman who was a landlord asking for her rent, saying you 2 months, 3 months past due, type of situation. But it also, I mean, it was just good. It showed a good dynamics of it, and it was fun at the same time. Which I think one of the things that Spike Lee attempts to jump back. Hold on one second, man. It tends to jump back and forth, but I'm gonna let you go ahead and go to your good. I'll be right back.
All right, go ahead, do your thing. So my good would definitely be kind of similar to what you were saying. First off, you're showing the black family, then you're showing things that I could relate to. Like when I first watched this movie, I was probably maybe 13 or so, maybe 14. And it just brought back nostalgia. And it wasn't too far off at the time. So it's released in 94. So I was, again, probably 13. Yeah, I was 13 at the time. And watching that, it just brought back that nostalgia of the things that we did as kids in the community and the fun that we had, like all the things that we were able to play, like watching them. They were playing against stickball. I've seen them playing Scully, and that's a New York City thing. I've never played before, but I know it when I see it. Definitely the red light, green light, like that right there. That was my joint, man. That we used to play that heavy in the hood back in the day. All those old games, just watching the families, the way that things were back then, it just gave you that nostalgia. The music selection, oh my God, don't even get me started on that. That music was dope. You had the Shy Lights, you had Aretha Franklin. They even introduced some of the brothers from Wu-Tang at the end on the outro, which was Crooklyn Dodgers, I believe was the name of the group. But one of the brothers or two of them from Wu-Tang was in there. So you had a dope selection of music through there. So it kept you in that nostalgia and that feel that you had during that time, the 70s, which transitioned into the 80s as well. So I remember all those sort of things growing up. And it just was a beautiful thing. So I'm going to let you go ahead with your bag because I got a question I'm going to add on here.
All right, man, because you're OG. You know what I'm saying? You're OG, so you definitely no. Now the bad for me, I'm just going to say, again, I think that's more of being able to be in this time and look at it. I really just didn't I didn't like how the boys was treating the mom, man. Like that was probably the bad for me. Like I just was like it was just a dynamic that kind of ties into my ugly, so I dropped my ugly too. It's just that dynamic of like black men at that time, because I remember watching Good Times with my uncle, and as I sat down in my late 20s, early 30s, and we watching this Good Times, I was like, yeah, this show is not. It didn't make me happy. I was like, I don't like this show. And he was like, nephew, that's how it was. Like you had to, like they wasn't like if you had a job, cool. But a lot of black men in the 70s, and this is I know this is early 90s, but just that same just dynamic as far as like what do you do to eat. And I think just the way the boys was treating the mom, because the dad was really trying to focus on his how to provide, but it was more so also something that he loved doing. I think it was just that dynamic kind of was like the bad aspect. And then that's kind of tie into my ugly, which is the fact that they didn't really explore what happened with the father. And I think a lot of movies and shows to this day still do that. And that's what kind of really put me in a position where I was like, come on, man. Like, cause they just made it seem like everything was good. And now he's so focused on this one thing, but he used to make money playing music. But I think the reason why I tie that into the ugly of how the father was portrayed, or just his mentality in the show, it was like, talking about rock and roll is like trash music and like it's not gonna last. And I was like, okay, I see how they're building him up. He's like, he's like, this is music from the soul. And he was playing classical music, which again was started by black people too, not Beethoven. He was playing this classical music with the piano that was beautiful when you heard him play. It was amazing. At the same time, I think it was like being stuck in a place and not seeing how to move it forward because he had all these other things, and it was insecurities of providing. It was just a multitude of things that just compounded that he wasn't, the way that Spike Lee showed him, was not able to express it fully to the person that was his wife and who he was he was in love with, and the kids that they had. So that dynamic to me was just ugly, just because it didn't go far enough. And I mean, I know more of the focus was on Troy and her mom mostly, because again, her mom was with the kids most of the time, but the dad just didn't. It was like one instance they had that conversation was like an argument, but that was it. And it was more so like, well, let's deep dive. That was a time where I was like, you want to deep dive, because the movie kind of just chopped and screwed, but it's still a great movie. It's a classic, but it's just chopped and screwed that aspect of him. And it was never like, what's really going on. And I thought they was going to do that on Drive to Virginia, but they didn't do that.
Yeah. And that's perfect. My bad would be just watching some of the struggles that they went through, and I'll kind of save that a little bit for later. But the ugly for me was, obviously we know the mom had passed away. Again, there's no spoiler alert because this movie is over 20 years old. If you haven't seen it, just I don't know what to tell you. The watching the passing of the mom, like that just was difficult. And those things are, and at least how I feel for black folks is, our moms are our rock, whether you're the son or daughter. Your mother is the rock, the foundation of the family. And to watch them lose her, specifically all these kids, 5 of them, and watch them lose her, at such a young age, it kind of left a hole in the whole family within itself. So I didn't like to see it, but it was also reality. And understanding that, they knew what cancer was back then, but it was something that at least I felt wasn't really spoken about too much. So once you seen the mom transition to getting sick and just showing different signs of things, it kind of prepared you and led up to it. But it was something I didn't like at all. Like, it wasn't ugly in the sense of, oh, I don't want to deal with this. It was just ugly that this is the reality that we went through and that those kids went through at the time. And if you know the history of this movie, Spike was kind of showing a autobiography pretty much of his family. And I don't know if his mom passed away young or not, but it's pretty much giving you a reflection of what he went through as he was younger. So with that being said, I don't know why we got an echo. You hear that?
Yeah, it might be me. Hold on. Okay. I'll cut off and cut back on. Hold on.
All right. So what was the dynamic of the family then and now?
Am I good?
Yeah, you good.
All right, cool. I think that might be me. I need to put headphones in so it doesn't echo off my voice. I think the dynamic of the family at first, again, is definitely mom's holding it down, dad really trying to figure his way, but also at the same time not letting go of the jazz or classical, because it sounded more like classical than jazz, but jazz definitely is piano as well too. So I'm not a jazz expert, so shout out to all the jazz experts out there who helps with blues and all that. I think that dynamic was the first beginning of it, and as the progression to the ending was more so of it was like you still needed a woman to hold the team together, and you got that from Troy towards the end. So some regards of what she could do. But yeah, that's how it took up. I mean, the boys I think they got a little bit more understanding with her, I guess, towards the end, but you really didn't get that. Again, you got the older sister, the siblings back and forth, but it really didn't dive too deep into the aspect of their relationship after their mom passed. But definitely Troy, I felt like she took on that mantle of like helping out the team. And I remember them days as far as with my sister, like me and her back and forth, we were gonna clean the kitchen and all that. But yeah, man, I think the dynamic went from the mom being a figurehead, and then again, the dad like seemed like he was taking it on, but the focus was always on Troy. And I don't know if that is because Spike Lee's younger sister, older sister, whatever was prevalent, since this is kind of supposed to be like a buyout, almost a overview look of his life, not necessarily for verbatim, but yeah, that's what I got from it.
Yeah, definitely. That was his older sister in there, which also played her uncle Clem, I believe. That was his girlfriend or wife, whatever. But that was Spike Lee's sister. That's his sister in real life, obviously, who's also in Do the Right Thing as his sister as well.
Yeah.
And she's his older sister. So I believe that might have been a play on what was going on in real life. What I took from that as far as the dynamic is, back then, you're talking the 70s, where definitely the father would be the breadwinner. He was the one that had to pretty much be working all the time. The moms most of the time would stay at home and make sure that the dinner was ready, the kids were taken care of, the house was clean, all that sort of stuff. And the father had to make sure he paid the bills. But of course, the women normally make sure that the account is balanced right, et cetera, et cetera. But most importantly, when you pay attention to how we live now, I don't feel like that's the dynamic that we have anymore. You still have people who sit down and have dinner together and stuff, but as far as us as a community, I don't see that too often. We do it on holidays, et cetera, but an everyday thing, it's not common like it used to be, where, as you can see, the father, he went out there and blew that horn, screaming dinner time, everybody running in, they already know what it is. They outside, they playing, but they came in the house to eat, prayed as a family, ate as a family, and that dynamic is still prevalent subtly, but right now I feel like it's not like it used to be, because I had that. I definitely had that in the 80s, and I miss that, you know what I'm saying? And I try to bring some of that semblance into what I do right now in my family. So I thought there was a huge change in that aspect.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so what did you think? What were the thoughts on the community that they lived in? Like, you spoke a little bit on, you had the brown folks in there, and you also had some blacks in there.
Yeah, but, man, you had a Jewish dude, Tony, that they was just like terrorizing, dropping the F-bomb on them all the time. Yep. You know what I mean? And I'm not talking about F-U-C-K, but
yeah, you cancel right now. You say that word.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, that's definitely hands down. So, I mean, but I think that dynamic with Tony, I think it was just it was a combativeness in the sense, and the reason why I focus on Tony so much, because he's very prevalent from his music late at night. Man got like 10 dogs or 20 dogs.
20 of them joints.
Yeah, 20 dogs in the brownstone downstairs. I mean, of course, you got the backyard area, so they just poop and don't seem like he was cleaning it up whatsoever. But I think he was like, when y'all move into the neighborhood, and that's something I think Spike hits on a lot in this movie, whether it's with the police, whether it was with anything in regards to gentrification of black folks, gentrifying a neighborhood that typically was either white, that the white people moved, and that doesn't, and white, I'm also including Jewish people in that context of white as well, because Tony was, even though I don't even know if Tony was Jewish, to be honest, he was a white guy, or seemed to be a white guy, because we couldn't really tell with those glasses and everything, because there was definitely some Puerto Ricans and some Dominicans that was almost as light as Tony, but I think it was just like a quick view of them. They were kind of like those extras that would just walk through type of joint. But yeah, man, I think that dynamic was cool, especially with the black family. I like the aspect, as I mentioned before, the family owning their brownstone. I think that is definitely key. I think people had this assumption because they were like, oh, the percentage hasn't changed from 42 or 41%, or it went down a percentage from black people owning their homes. I just don't think that people understood that dynamic, because as I tie it into Good Times and how it's like, yo, when you were looking for a job, it was like, as a black man, it was like you have I forgot what Dr. Greg Carr said. He was like, black women always worked, regardless if they was at the house or not. They was always working to bring extra money, because a black man was one conversation away from losing their job because they cussed somebody out for talking to them disrespectfully, or they were going to jail because the person called them the N-word and try to spit on them as if we were nothing but property. But that's a whole nother conversation. And that's where, I mean, that dynamic as a whole, like I remember that the whole neighborhood coming out when people arguing and stuff, like, man, as a kid, that was always the case, bro. Like, I mean, the kids fight, like the girls fight. Literally, I remember that listening to my sister, if they ever got into issues with other girls, it was just like, but they all friends, but they all talking trash to each other, and then they would fight, but then they'd be like, all right, let's go do this, let's go jump rope, or let's go listen to music or something. So it was, to me, it was good, man. It was just it was a good reminder. It was some parts like the dudes that was huffing the glue. Like, I had to ask Jasmine. I was like, what the hell what they huffing? I forgot. You know, glue. It was glue. I'm like, these dudes is wilding. But I mean, that went from huffing glue to which they didn't show in this, because this was kind of like up until I probably say crack and cocaine really got into the neighborhood, and that, well, crack, not cocaine, because everybody was doing cocaine in the 70s. But when crack came into the play, so they weren't there yet. But I just really think it was trying to show you. I think Spike was attempting to show you a lot of things in a very short period of time because it was just so much. And he could have focused a lot on just one or two people, but it would have been that would have been too big of a deep dive when you got the whole neighborhood that he was trying to just show, where it seemed chaotic, but to us watching it, it wasn't chaotic. It was like that's just what happened on a day-to-day, even now. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just things are different. So definitely liked it.
Yeah, that's a very good explanation. You touched on something that I kind of skimmed over as far as like I'd seen him huffing the glue and stuff, which was prevalent back then in the 70s and even in the 80s. But I'm surprised he didn't show any heroin uses because you have the veterans come back from the Vietnam War who had post-traumatic stress and stuff. So they're dealing with all that aspect. But you did notice Vic, you know, he has some PTSD from being in the Vietnam War, but he didn't have any drug usage from my understanding. And what I really appreciated was that back then it took a village to raise a child, right? And I remember being able to be outside, and if I did something wrong and I knew my neighbors see me, I knew they would tell my father or my mother, and I had to get ready to get my butt whooped because I already
But everybody though, man, not just your mom and daddy. My uncles would be like, yeah, you can whoop them.
Yeah, exactly. So that whole thing right there, that dynamic was beautiful back then. Right now, you can't touch nobody's kid, or you can't say nothing to somebody's kid. Oh, you ain't supposed to be doing this. Oh, I'm calling the cops and all this. It's different now, man. And the beauty of it was there was a relationship in the network with your neighbors to where you respected each other, and you still have that in pockets of communities, specifically if it's us in there, right? But that whole aspect of watching each other grow up, you best friends, you arguing one day and that day, and then later on you playing and stuff. But that whole, it took a village to raise a child. That was definitely displayed in this movie. And it didn't matter what the background was, which you came from, whether you were Dominican, Puerto Rican. The only person I would say would be excluded, as you said, too, would have been Tony Eyes, just because his whole living situation. But everybody else, they was a part of the family, the Carmichaels, which is the family that it was focusing on. So that aspect now, it took a village to raise a child. Again, I believe that's gone, but it was definitely represented in this movie, and it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, here's something I really like to focus on because I got three of them, but I grew up with two of them. What relationships do siblings have that relates across all generations until now?
Oh man, it's got to be the older sibling, like just terrorizing the younger sibling, man. Like it's like, I mean, for my sister, I think the times of like her having to wash the dishes or clean the bathroom. There was times too, and I know if she was here, she'd be like, "Yep." There's times where it was supposed to be my week to clean, but I was just like, "No, starting to clean the bathroom." My mom be like, "Clean it," and I think that dynamic. No, seriously, I think that dynamic of how Troy and her mother's dynamic was like, yeah, these boys is wild, but for you got to be able to maintain. Like, you got to be able to defend yourself 100%, but you got to make sure that things are taken care of because you can't be in no slop. And I think that is one thing for good and for bad for females, women, that they have to deal with that. So that was definitely a big thing, because there was a couple of times where I skipped out on my sister when I was supposed to clean the bathroom, and I definitely was like, I cleaned it last week, lying my ass off. But my mom, again, that harshness of wanted her to be able to, and I think this is something that Troy's mom, at least in my perspective, wanted to do, was like, you don't need to rely on anybody but yourself as far as to maintain what you need to maintain, and anyone you choose to bring in and build something with, it's because you're able to take care of yourself first. And I think that was very very beautiful with that. And then just the older brother, Clinton and Troy, just their interaction. Like, I remember, not my sister taking anything like that, but I remember me and my sister definitely went at it one time like crazy, because she had my father bought her a little CD player, boombox joint. And like, I was washing the car one day, man, and I was listening to it, and she came out with her friends, was like, "Hey, I'm gonna just take the boombox as mine. I'm ready to listen to music." I was like, "Can you just wait till I finish the car?" And she was like, "No." And I'm like, you don't watch, because again, she didn't wash cars at all. Like, I was the one that had to always wash everybody, all the cars. And she literally kicked the boombox right after I took it back from her. She kicked it down the stairs, man. And we literally, like, that was the only time where I think we actually had physically fought. Like, physically fought, bro. And I never, from that day, like, I always tempered my anger because I was like, my mom was like, that's your sister. I was like, no, but she literally just kicked that thing down. My CD broke, everything, man. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, I got to get up early in the morning every Sunday, either Saturday or Sunday, and wash all these cars. You don't wash them, you don't vacuum them, you don't wipe the windows. I'm like, just give me 30 minutes. Y'all can go watch. Because at that time, you didn't have no YouTube, so you would catch like music videos on BET or something like that. Before, and this was like when we had the box back in the day.
Yeah.
But they didn't have that. They didn't have that at that time. That the CD players was heavy with the stereo system. So I was like, man, I told her, I was like, man, there's video. I remember getting VHSs and recording videos at that time. You was able to do that. And I was like, you can watch these videos. So I just know that dynamic. And when you're young, I think when you're young, man, and that's why I was saying that was my bad between how the boys talk to their mom or how they view their mom. Like that sibling thing, it just is very prevalent. Even when you don't, I think it's just like genetically embedded. Because even Nova and Messiah, my daughter, my nephew, man, like they go at it about everything. And I'm like, y'all just seeing each other like once every 2 weeks. Why are y'all arguing about the damn toy truck that you wasn't even paying attention to until he got here? You know, it's just crazy, bro.
Yeah. It's funny because there's a lot of that movie that reminded me of myself, you know, specifically when it came to the siblings, because I was the middle child. I got an older brother and a younger sister that we all lived together. And my brother and sister used to fight a lot. That would be Troy and my brother would be Clinton. I'm talking about them two would go at it all the time. And I would have to be the mediator. But more importantly, we were rough on my sister, but not too rough. But we prepared her for reality, like as an adult. You're not gonna be able to fight her now as a woman. Like she'll fight grown men. That's how tough she is, and that's based upon her growing up with two older brothers, which is myself and my brother. So watching that, you know, it just brought back the nostalgia. But we used to go at it sometimes. My sister, the last time she tried to fight me, I had to be like 16 years old. And I had to let her know, look, I never put my hands on her, but I had to just grab her up and toss her on the ground. Like, listen, man, you're not messing with me. I'm always gonna be your older brother and you're female. Your strength is not compared to mine. I'm just gonna hold you here. Now, my brother, he would try to like literally beat her up, and me and him would start fighting because of that. Because I'm like, no, you're not gonna do that to her. But just watching that whole dynamic, it brought back those memories and the nostalgia of them going through it and then us doing the same thing. But it was also beautiful because we could fight all we want to. When we step out the house, you better not think about looking at my brother or sister wrong. I'm about to be on your ass. You know, I can't tell how many boys I done beat up that said something crazy to my sister or whatever. Or even fighting for my brother because he was a punk at one point in time, for a long time. I used to beat up people for him, and he's 3 years older than me. So that whole experience of watching this movie, it just gave me so much nostalgia, and it felt good. And watching, I even had my kids watch this, so I tried to explain to them, look, what you see here was how it was. Now my kids, they around each other, and they'll be sitting there with their phones, sitting next to each other, all looking at TikTok or whatever they're looking at, and they'll be arguing, oh, get off me, and just nonsense like that. And I say, man, y'all don't understand. Y'all fight with each other, and I agree. You're gonna disagree, but y'all be acting like your enemies, like 24/7. And I said, we wasn't as bad as kids. We fought, but we also had a lot more times of peace than we did of contention. So it's crazy, man. And it was, again, watching that whole thing was a beautiful, beautiful experience.
Man, well said, brother. Well said.
This is something I really wanted to get into because I remember I could relate to this heavy. And I ain't gonna say. I'll wait till you say it. What experiences did Troy have that were embarrassing for her?
That was embarrassing for her. For you mean for her? Yeah. Oh man, come on, man. It was a lot. I mean, I remember this. This is every person whoever got food stamps or come on, bro. Like I remember, like real talk, my mom's, and this is crazy that we're talking about that, right? Because that also shows about the economic situation for Black folks. But like it's something that we can laugh about because it was like something that someone, some way, shape, or form, when your mom's was down or dad or mom, dad split up or whatever. I remember the day my mom pulled out the color money, bro, and I'm like, at the Pack and Save, which Safeway didn't even want to acknowledge it was Pack and Save in West Oakland or / Emeryville until recently, where it's like Pack and Save, a Safeway brand or a Safeway company, right? And I'm like, bro, I remember we was young and she pulled that money out at the cashier thing, bro, and I was like, what is that? You know what I mean? And it was like, it was crazy. But to me, it was more, it wasn't like Troy where she wasn't really embarrassed. The girl just took her money, like beat her up and took her money. But it was more so for me of like, I remember hearing those jokes. You know what I mean? Like I remember seeing people be at the store, and that's a deeper conversation, but be at the store and using food stamps. But they would be the main ones like picking on people and talking bad about like the shoes and stuff they were wearing, and they would have on Jordan and stuff like that. And I'm just kind of like, why would, you know, it didn't make sense to me. So I was always internalizing that as something that I didn't want to be a part of or be the joke of. And then when I saw my mom pull those out, I was like, oh man, you know, and I was looking around the store, making sure nobody from middle school and was there, because you know they was gonna roast you. You know what I mean? They know you was gonna get roasted in the store, and you was gonna get roasted at school. So it was yeah, man. That was probably, you know, I know she had other embarrassing moments for a female and just growing up and what they were talking about her being flat chested. But that's those food stamps, man. That brought so many memories back, bro. Like I was just like, man, I saw that a couple of times, but now, bro, I'm like, man, give me all the food stamps, bro. That's my taxpayer dollars, bro. I don't give a damn, bro. I'm trying to get to this day, man. You know, living in the Bay, you make 100,000 or less, you consider low income, bro. Cash me out.
Yeah, look, listen. Over here in New York, man, Buffalo, like they raise it every year, you know, based upon the inflation of the economy and all the cost of living. I believe low income now is like 44,000, if I'm correct. Might be a little bit off in Buffalo. That tells you the difference of y'all cost of living and ours. So that explains why your mortgage is going to be ridiculous and mine ain't bad, but it's expensive.
Come on, bro, talk that talk.
But watching that, right, that brought back memories, because I remember we lived on this street, obviously black neighborhood, and we had a corner store right across the street from us, which was, you know, one of the joints where Arabic brothers move into the neighborhood. They buy a store. We go in there for groceries and just little things, unless we go all the way to the grocery store, which was down the street. Anyways, my mother sent me to the store to get some milk and maybe some bread. And I'm like, and she pulled out the coupon book, the food stamp book. Yeah, like, Mommy, I don't want to go in there with that. And she like, you want some bread? You want to have French toast or whatever? You're gonna have to go to the store and get what you got to get. I'm like, well, everybody gonna see me. They gonna know I got food stamps. And the same thing that Troy's mom said is what my mother said. She said, boy, everybody in his neighborhood got food stamps. You just don't know it. So I go across the street and go to the store, and there's nobody in the store. I go get the bread. I go get the milk. Soon as I get ready to go to the counter and pay for it, everybody come out. Everybody in the store now. I'm like, no, this can't be happening. Like, I can't let them see me take this money out. So I go up to the counter, everybody in there, and they like, the dude goes, you ready? And I'm like, no, they can go ahead of me. They can go ahead of me. I was 12 years old. I'm like, no, they can go ahead of me. And I kept letting everybody go, and eventually it kind of cleared out, and I had to end up paying for it. But I was like, yo, that was so embarrassing for me. But at the same time, I didn't realize it. Now, give me food stamps all day. I don't care. I done paid taxes since I was 16. Give me all them stamps. I don't
all that shit,
get that EBT card, swipe. I don't care. It is what it is.
I'm trying to get it. I'm trying to get it now.
You know what I'm saying? I already know what it is, but that was crazy, man. I knew you was able to relate.
Come on, bro. Everybody gotta relate, man. But I think too, if you go back to that question, just because I think this is something that we need to just dive a little bit deeper on, as far as like the understanding of how, like, when people tell you something or try to make jokes about you, how you have when people talk about tough skin or not letting words get to you, it's like you got to look at the bigger dynamic. Because I remember the people that talk shit about other people, and this is middle school, man. So I know nobody's like really fully developing the mind. Even the 8th graders, because the 8th graders in my middle school, bro, they was like 6 feet tall, like 6'2", 6'5", but like they was doing stuff because they were in the 90s. It was like it was not a big separation like it is now. Like I remember kids used to be going in the 21 and ups when they was only supposed to be in the 18, 18 and up. And but it's just that dynamic of like, bro, realistically, like when you pull up there, man, you can't worry about what everybody else think. And then on top of that, just talking about when you said how the Arabic brothers moved into the neighborhood, my auntie told me here in Richmond, California, she was always saying that when they was growing up in North Richmond, like it was all black people, like black stores, black corner store, all that stuff like that. But again, with the introduction to crack, with guns freely moving through the neighborhood and just everything getting crazy, people start moving out. People who you thought were like business people, I mean, who are entrepreneurs and all that, they start getting turned out on crack. And so the neighborhood just went and fell to ruins. And then people came in and bought in that neighborhood. And it was just like you had to deal with that dynamic too, because I think with Tony's character in particular, I didn't think they went too deep into it, but they didn't really have like a real conversation with Tony. It was a kid talking to an adult, you know, and then it was a parent just like, oh, my kid wouldn't do that, instead of like, well, what's really going on, and sitting down and have a conversation. But again, the friction between everybody is that Tony didn't want y'all here, and y'all really didn't want Tony here, to be honestly, because he came in with negativity off bat. And I think Tony was Italian. I don't think Tony was
he might have been, most likely.
But I think that was also key too, and that ties into to this embarrassing moment, because like, again, when you come in with food stamps, man, like, it's not just the kids in your neighborhood or kids at the school talking bad about you. It's also that person that didn't want you in the neighborhood in the first place. Like, see, they couldn't afford this, and they couldn't do A, B, and C, man. So just really, it was very powerful, even though it was very like, it was a scene that didn't have too many words, and that's what I liked about it, because you know if you know.
Yeah, I know
if you know, man.
I know which one you're talking about. Okay. So as Black folks, what common denominator do we have being in America?
Man,
and that relates to this movie in a lot of different ways. But I want to hear your perspective.
I think the common thing we have, man, I think a lot of people would say struggle, but I'm not even going to say that, man. I'm going to say African ways of knowing that we have been taught not to accept. You know what I mean? And I mean that heavily from how grandma was looking out the window. Can we keep it 100? I remember my grandma used to sit on the porch when we be outside playing, and don't let nothing pop off. Hey, you know what I mean? And she'd come down with her cane. What y'all doing? You know, get your asses in the house. Like, seriously. Yeah. But it was a respect level for grandma, because when the grandma was outside on the porch, it wasn't a lot of certain words wasn't being said. You know what I mean? Certain things wasn't being done, because you already knew that auntie was gonna come for that ass if grandma heard you out of pocket. Now, when grandma was in the house and it was just y'all in the streets and, you know, around the corner or whatever, then it's all, you know, it's free reign. But you also remember, because I remember that like when aunties or older people was looking out the window or sitting on the porch, your mouth was very controlled. Let's put it that way. And I just yeah, man.
Yeah.
It was deep. I'm gonna let you talk, man. But it was definitely.
I agree with you on that. But I should have reworded that a little better.
Got you.
What I take from that is, if you notice, pretty much every Black person in America, most of us originate down south, right? So that explains why Troy went to Virginia. That explains why I got family that's from Mississippi and Louisiana and
Alabama.
Excuse me. Yeah, but they over there in California, right? But they originated down in Mississippi. So that right there is something that is real, real deep. Like, even some people from New York City, some of them originate from, down south, but now it's, most of them are from the Caribbean, whether it's Trinidad, Barbados, Jamaica, all of the West Indian countries and stuff. But anyways, we have that common connection with that. And the experience that we have was the struggle for sure. But most of us originate down south. And you can see that here, because that's why, again, the father's like, what, you don't like eating, well, I think he might have said lima beans or green, something like that. No, the uncle asked that question. And he like, man, I love that good old down south cooking. The uncle was talking to her when she came back from Virginia. That right there, I appreciate it. It's the difference between what I tasted here in Buffalo and when I went down south to visit my family in New Orleans and Mississippi, and we had the family reunion and stuff. That was a whole different type of cooking. So that right there, I love it. I love he showed the beauty of that aspect.
Oh, facts, man. That is facts.
All right. So what feelings did you get watching Troy prepare for the funeral? Her mom's had passed.
Man, I think for that was something I related to, because when my not necessarily when my grandma died, because my grandma, when she I didn't see her much when she decided to to not continue with she had to have like an IV and this monitor on her for like the rest of her time. And she said, no, I ain't doing that. So she told everybody to cut the plug. So that was something that, again, because the adults had friction as far as what they wanted to do, but it was her decision. I didn't have too much. But when my grandpa passed away, like he turned 80 in the hospital. We had a party for him in the hospital. And I just understood where Troy was coming from, because I was more so I was more so taking care of everybody, I guess, what my mom would say, as far as my cousins. Like, I remember my cousin, when we first found out my grandpa passed away, he had like a bottle. I don't know, it was a bottle. It wasn't tequila. It was something. I don't know if it's Hennessy or whatever, but he literally was about to down it. I took that bottle from him. Like, he tore up he was ripping the fence off the dam across the street. And I just remember having that feeling where it was like a lot of calm. But with Troy, it was after the funeral that she was not calm anymore, where she let it out. For me, it was that calm. I let everybody go see my grandfather first, and I was like the last one to see him in the casket, and like literally just broke down, bro. Like, I was supposed to wash his car. I apologized to him because I didn't wash it. It was just a whole bunch of things, man. So that the feeling that, Troy really didn't, because she didn't want to see her mother in that way. And I felt the same way too. I didn't want to see my grandfather like that, but it was like, you had, again, to what her dad said, is like, you're not the only one hurting. And that's a fact. Like, that was my grandpa, but his kids, his kids was there. You know what I mean? Like, my uncles, my aunties, my mom, like, they was there. They had to deal with all that emotion. They had to deal with all the things that I think, which I liked about Spike Lee, is like, it's not that the family's turmoils as far as like the kids and their issues with each other and all that was alleviated, or they were able to work through it. It was just that it's bigger than that now because mama not here, and that's how I felt that's how I felt like when my grandparents, especially when my grandpa left, that's how the kids was at that time. And then they went back into it after a few years because they still haven't dealt with, that issue. But for Troy, like, I felt that 100%, man. And I'm glad they showed it. It was for her throwing up and kind of crying, but more so just being sick. Because she ran down the stairs and saying, "Mommy, Daddy, stop fighting," when her dad was trying to kill this rat. And he was like, baby, mama not here. And it was just that, to me, was like, when I saw my grandfather in his casket, it was like, yeah, he not, it's not no that calmness and like, maybe woulda, coulda, shoulda, if type of thing. Like, nah, it's like his essence is no longer on this physical plane. So you have to cope with that especially as a kid. Luckily for me, I was older, and Troy was only 10. I think I was a freshman or a sophomore in high school when that happened. So it was a little different and a little bit more, 5-year difference, 4-year difference. So it was just a little bit more things that I went through that Troy probably didn't go through, especially as a female and 10 years old, with your mom being the only other female that you was able to talk to. I mean, that is, yeah, man, that was just deep. I felt that one time. I just got real silent when that whole aspect was going down in the movie.
For myself, I related that to my aunt passing away. This was my favorite aunt. I had two of them. Both of them passed away 4-year gap. So my first favorite one, she passed away. I was 10 years old too. And I remember that transition of watching her go from being a normal size woman. She might have been weighing 120, 130, 5'2", beautiful woman, beautiful sister. And the next time I seen her a couple months later, she might have weighed like 60, 70 pounds. So she had cancer as well. But that, and I was 10. So this is the first time I remember, death clearly, and just watching that whole thing take place, watching my family, how they, interacted with each other, how they went through. And this was my mom's sister. So my mother took it hard because this was her, my mom is the oldest and her sister came right after her. So them two had a very close bond. And my aunt, unfortunately, never had kids. So she had a relationship with all her nieces and nephews, and it's a lot of us. It's a whole lot of us. So we will always be together as cousins and everything. So my aunt would come get all her nieces and nephews pretty much every weekend. We stayed in out of her house. So we could stay up as late as we want and do whatever we wanted to do. We've seen some good and some bad with that relationship, but watching her go was tough. And I thought about how Troy went through it, but I thought about myself in that moment, how I didn't want to go to her funeral and stuff, and looking at her body in the casket and just seeing how she went from this, full, beautiful woman to a 60, 70 pound just skeleton in that casket, and watching how it affected the rest of the family. And even at the repast, as we all together, the transition is sad, but at the repast, everybody eating, you're celebrating that they're not here suffering anymore. They're into the next phase in what we call life, or afterlife. And that part was beautiful, but that was a very tough transition, especially for Troy, who had, as you said, used this woman, which was her mom, as the only close relationship she had. And I believe her mom wanted her to go to Virginia to prepare her to be kind of independent in a sense, because she knew it was coming. Because you've seen through the movie certain things happen, and the mother just, kind of being sick, but they would show that conversation you'll have early in the morning. She'd get up in the morning, her mom's in that barber chair, and she'd sit down with her and be talking and stuff like that. So it was tough for me to watch that. And I wanted my kids to see that, because they haven't ever been to a funeral, but they've experienced, and they knew my grandfather was about to pass. So that's something that I believe that we need to pass down to our kids in general as a people, to see that this is a normal part of life. You have life and you have death. And it's a continuous cycle. So this is a light question. If you can go back to the 70s, would you? And I don't even have to say the 70s. If you can go back to that time when we were kids, would you?
Man, nah, bro. I'm gonna keep it.
Elaborate on that.
No, I'm gonna say nah. I'm gonna say nah, just because the things that you did or didn't do, it shaped you to who you are today, and the decisions that you make and how you look at the world. And I think one of the biggest things of why the universe or God, or however you want to put it, has not allowed us to find out time travel at this point in time, or in the way that we assume it to be in sci-fi movies and all that, is because like there is no, if you have a reset button, then you'll never, I don't think you'll ever learn. You know what I mean? Like what you're learning is just to say, this is what I won't do. So when I go back, I won't do it that way, instead of like final decisions. I mean, I love playing role-playing games, RPGs, and the RPGs that set themselves apart from others to me are the ones that once you make a decision, that's it. There is no, you have to play a new game to go and make another decision, like what I'm doing right now, like The Witcher 3, that is one of the oldest games ever. I mean, but still one of the most critically acclaimed. But I'm going back and I'm making all different decisions than I ever made. And I haven't played that game in I don't know how many months. But I think that that's what we need to realize, is that those things in your brain that tell you should or should not do this, that gut feeling and instinct, like if you didn't make those decisions, it shaped you and made you more cautious or more aware of what it is that you as a person should do. So now I wouldn't want to go back to that time. I mean, what I want to go is just experience certain things. I guess I would say, yeah, like the joy of hanging out with the friends, talking about the different colored Power Rangers that would come out, playing Pokemon, and really just seeing those good times. But as far as that goes, like, nah, man, because I don't want to get involved in that, and there's some things I definitely want to take back. I want to go all the way back time before the first white man touched down on the shores of the continent of Africa, but I know where that intent would go. And I don't know what would transpire, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. At the same time, it wouldn't show us to be as cautious with the way that we treat other people, ourselves, and things of that nature, because we would still be living in this paradise where nothing really, only thing affecting us is us. But yeah, I mean that was just a long way to answer the question of like, nah, man, yeah, I want to go see stuff, but I just want to, just as to remember, ingrain that the memory, the ways of knowing, but I ain't changing nothing, man.
I'm gonna keep it short, sweet, and simple. Yes, I would go back, and not specifically to the 70s, but I would like to see the 70s for my own reasons, but also the 80s and the 90s. And I'm gonna say more the 80s than anything, because we still had that analog aspect of stuff that wasn't totally digital. We had that experience. If I could take away the crack aspect of what happened to us as a people, Definitely. Just to get that experience again, because things were so I can't say easy, but it was just different. The things you had to worry about and be concerned about are not the same as they were today, as far as, oh, you're gonna get COVID and all this stuff. We didn't have those thought processes back then. It was just fun and playing. The biggest thing I had to worry about was, man, make sure my homework is done and I don't get caught doing something I ain't supposed to do, because I'm about to get my ass whooped by my father or my mother. Well, my father, because I wasn't ever scared to get whooped by my mother. It was just the respect aspect. But if I can go back to that time frame, yes, I would, just to relive those memories and stuff. Now, this is the last question I got for us. What did you take from this movie as it relates to the governance structure?
Right, that's right, brother. Shout out Dr. Greg Carr, man. I knew you
Yes, sir.
That governance structure out there, man. I'm learning. I got so many books to read, and I stopped playing with my life. Now, what I learned about the governance structure is the ways of knowing are always there. Us as people of African descent, and we think it's not there because, and I want to, and this is just from my own personal perspective, because we look at when we meet people who are first generation or second generation people from the continent of Africa, known as Africa, and they talk about certain things that they do, they have certain languages, we feel out of place as far as African Americans or Black folks. We feel like, I don't know that culture. But reality is that culture is embedded in us, because we're talking about okra, black eyed peas, all those things. Like, those things come from the continent of Africa. Those things, regardless good, bad, or indifference, when the African people were being taken from their land and put on these boats, they were given by certain other African people okra in their hair and rice and all these things that they can grow on the seeds. They put seeds in their hair so they can grow them wherever they were going. So those ways of knowing are not gone. That governance structure is always there. The hierarchy, you got the elders, and I think that's any culture, but especially in African culture, because again, us being African descendants, like there is when the elders sit down in a group and talk, you got one or two things to do. You shut up and listen, or you are not in the room. And that's what it is. And I think when you show, and Dr. Greg Carr said this, and it reminded me deeply of what that meant to me when he said it. He was like, you have to be invited into the conversation. So as a child, if you always with the elders and you always sitting and listening, they're like, okay, this child is ready to take on things. So let me see where that child's brain is, and let me start asking simple questions. So instead of hey DJ, go get, like my grandpa used to say, go give me this, go give me that. You sit down and bring it. Hey DJ, what you think about A, B, and C? And I'm like, what, me? What I think? But it was like, and you had that conversation, they would listen, and then they would break down certain things, and if they agreed to you, they would tell you why. And it was those ways of knowing, man, like that governance structure is always going to be embedded in us. And I think we have to beyond be open to it. We have to accept it, and we have to let our memory, our ways of knowing, even if you don't read, even if you're not a super reader of books, or you don't watch Dr. Greg Carr, or you not learning about Africana studies, all you got to do is listen to the elders in your life. And if you don't want to listen to your parents say, and you got grandparents, go to your grandparents. If you got an uncle that's older than your mama and your daddy, go talk to them. Go talk to your aunties. Go talk to your cousins who are in there. And I'm talking about in their 60s and 70s and 80s, so that you can get that, man. But I think the governance structure was shown clearly in that. I think the hierarchy, like, come on, Troy was the only one to have a TV in her room. Like, and that's a stipulation, because you got 4 boys and you have a girl. And it's like, no, like y'all 4 boys going to be out there running around and whatever the case may be. But Troy get this because y'all already going to bum rush her for everything else. And the parents knew that. So the TV, y'all all got to go in her room to watch the TV. You know what I mean? And that's not, and that wasn't, and I don't think that was the only TV in the house, but that's what they showed. But I think that was, they set that up because they know that in Troy's room is closest to the stairs, which is another governance structure thing too.
Yes.
Closest to the stairs. So when you come down the stairs, you come up the stairs, her room is right there. And so it's like, what y'all watching, what y'all doing type of thing, versus a boy's room is more either I think either one level lower or in the corner. So it's more steps that they got to take off of the stairs. And that's a governance structure thing too. You know what I mean? Like it's little things like that where people be like, oh, no, that don't make no sense. Like, no, that's the ways of knowing. You know what I mean? So I'm glad you asked that question, bro. That was a great question.
And that's the last question. So for myself, I have two things to add to that. Number one, I'll start with the things that you mentioned. So you said okra and you said the black eyed peas. Yeah. I love okra, absolutely love okra. And one of the things I use in often, obviously, would be gumbo. And obviously, gumbo is not an origination from something here in the United States and Louisiana. It's from Africa, but it's translated differently based upon the influences in their states down south. So I know how to make gumbo from scratch. I got my grandmother's recipe. Okra is in there, definitely in there. I love it like that. And number two, to go back to the other part, and then I'm gonna add one more thing before I end it. I take it that when you are Black, you are economically disenfranchised. You don't have as much money and stuff. You're forced to grow up young, which is what's shown here. That means, listen, I'm going to give you this grocery list. Go to the store and get X, Y, and Z. This is all the money we have. This is what you got to do. You got to get it. You got to bring it back. We've done that. You're forced to grow up young. Now, these kids and these generations don't have those aspects in general because everybody's kind of spoiled to things being at their fingertips, whether it be, let me search up how to find this, or let me touch this, or let me text this.
Let me order this. Let me order this, bro. You ain't got to go to the store.
Exactly. Those things are convenient. So I describe to my kids plenty of times, do you know the things that I went through that I would never let you be exposed to just because times were harder, they were different, and it forced me to be an adult or be mature earlier. I'm letting y'all be kids, but y'all want to be grown so fast. We have to walk this far to the grocery store and stuff. And as Black folks in the governance structure, all those things are embedded in there. And most importantly, and I'm going to end with this, my daughter's bedroom is right next to my bedroom. So that tells you something. You come in this house, you got to go through me before you get to her. You think you're going to do something? I can hear what's going on in that room right next door.
That's a fact.
You know what I'm saying?
Come on, brother.
That's part of that governance structure. We're not even going to play that. And guess where my boy's room is at? Upstairs. Yeah, upstairs. You're going to do what you're going to do. But my daughter is right by me. And that's how we're going to do that. So that's that ways of knowing. But
and even with that, with the boys' room being upstairs, they still got to go up the stairs, so they still got to pass you. The thing is that and I know it sounds, I think it might sound patriarchal, if that's even a word, if I pronounce that correctly. It's really that I think, patriarchal. Thank you. Is that they'll be like, oh well, the boys' room can't be next to yours. It's like at the end of the day, I think people don't understand again the governance ways of knowing women, regardless of how European Anglo-Saxons have treated them, women are the most sacred, they're the greatest asset because again they can have children, they run the culture, so of course they are going to be protected by all means in any chance. So for her bed to be right next to yours, that's what it is. It's like, I'm gonna protect you 100%. It's going down, like it's not that you don't love your boys, it's just like, look, y'all know y'all can put your hands up and fight as best you can, but it's time to get with it. But my baby, like right now, it's going down.
Yeah. And my father kind of embedded that in us as well. Protect your sister at all costs, and we understood what that meant. So that's again governance structure. So 100%, man. This episode was another one for the books.
Crooklyn.
If you have not watched Crooklyn, you got to watch it. If you haven't watched any Spike Lee movie, shame on you. I love anything that Spike Lee has released. Anything. My favorite is Malcolm X. That's just me. But anyway,
that's a fact. Oh, you already know. I'm not satisfied.
Yeah, exactly. that man has too much power. You know what I'm saying? That sort of stuff. But another episode for the books. We will see y'all again, as always, on every Friday on Black Nerd
Fridays, baby. We out.
Peace.
Yee.